So, good morning. Another cute session. Champions using teams effectively. You all are the champions. And we're here to just talk about teams. Office hours, answer any questions we can. So glad you're here. Feel free to come off mute during our half hour here or use the chat for questions. We got Stacy here and myself, Ricardo Wilkins, and all of you. So good stuff. So just as I am looking at the chat, we'll just start there. So Glenn's saying only the organizer has access to automatically generated attendance reports. When we create co-organizers, they still do not have access to attendance reports. And I'm thinking that sounds about right. I think.
Looks like you're fire up my matrix and check on that.
Yeah. So it looks like you might be typing a part 2 to that question. But Amanda, did you have a thought there?
I was going to say, I confirm that yeah. I think it's on the matrix that only the original organizer has access to those attendance reports.
Yeah.
I wish it wasn't that way.
Yeah. Yeah. So hopefully you're friends with the organizer of your meeting and they will provide those to you. Maybe that's what it is. It's a feature supporting friendship and communication. And, yeah, so Glenn's wanting that on the roadmap. Change that.
Well, the thing is it okay if I go ahead and speak?
Sure, yeah, go for it.
Okay. We have, I'm in state government. We have different divisions, and they each have their own training unit with multiple trainers and multiple classes. And so they have, for lack of a better term, clerical staff that set up all the classes and meetings and invite all the people and blah, blah, blah. And then that person is the only one who can access the attendance reports. The trainers can't access the attendance reports of their own classes. And so anyway, if, we thought, well, we'll just elevate all the trainers from presenter to co-organizer, but that didn't help.
Mm.
So it would be convenient, the co-organizer is supposed to have all the rights of the organizer. And so it would help us if a co-organizer could access an attendance report.
Yeah, I think I don't know that the design intended for a full parity of the organizer and co-organizer. But to your point, yes, that at least that feature would certainly be helpful. I was trying to think of something in the meantime that could help with that, other than, as I think about your scenario, having those administrators, hit the download button on a attendance report and always just pop them into a shared, storage location where co-organizers can come and find their attendance reports. And I don't know if that gets dicey if people don't want to see the lists of other people, but that's just the only thing I could think of in the meantime.
Second issue, real quick. One of our users found a Teams classroom function on YouTube. And of course, everything on YouTube is for the general Teams. It's not for GCC. But I was wondering, in GCC, is there a classroom function where you can set up a classroom and have files and schedules and blah, blah, blah for that class?
So hopefully I say this right, and Stacey, you can keep me honest. There's Teams commercial, there's Teams for GCC, and then there's Teams for education, which is probably in the commercial cloud, but it is certainly a whole other product with a slew of features that don't exist in either Teams commercial or GCC. So it's very specific to education and a large amount of education specific features. So, and I think I don't know if you need to actually be an accredited, school or something to even get access to that. I mean, I've never gotten my hands on a Teams education tenant myself, but so that's definitely what you've probably seen is not a when is it coming to GCC kind of thing. That's very specific to the education version of Teams. So not no plans to bring that to commercial or GCC. So the short answer to that question, how can I get to the classroom? I don't think there's a way to get that in the Teams that we all use for work, other than getting a GCC, a education version of Teams. And I have had folks, because we certainly know in the government space, there are trainers and folks that doing classes. And I've had that asked before. That conversation ended up being a loop into let's talk to the education team and see if your accreditation qualifies you for blah, 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 that kind of thing. So,
Okay,
so I think Stacy, does that sound about right to you?
Oh, yeah, you nailed it. There are just some key education features that live in the education available tenants. I also will concur that I have heard this request before, and it has been escalated. I know that there, because of the common professional development needs in the government sector, there's attention on it. However, I don't know that there are any roadmap commitments at this point. So we can certainly keep our ears open. It's one that I've been pulling for because I've come from an education background. I worked at the local community college and the university here in Tallahassee prior to becoming a technology geek. And so I always like to dabble in what education gets in their tenants. And I can see a lot of application for those sorts of things here. That said, in the classroom, I wonder if there's not something that we can help you shape that would, at a minimum, mimic and maybe give you a way of looking at a Teams meeting or a team or a channel in a slightly different way. And I know that there are third-party applications for education that plug right into Teams, whether you're in a GCC, commercial, or EDU tenant, like the learning management systems. I've seen a lot of my customers get really excited because they're discovering that the LMS systems they're already using have Teams integrations that come at no additional charge. Some do, some don't. Some come with the package that they already own, and some they may have to license up in order to access those integrations. Yeah, Absorb is one that Ricardo just flashed on the screen. LMS 365, Cornerstone is another one. Those are all very common and very pervasive LMS systems that our customers have enjoyed the use of for a long time. And the fact that they have those integrations now within Teams is pretty cool. And I think it's gotten some of my customers at least excited about the opportunity to take advantage of that. And although I don't have a solid roadmap date to give you, we do have Viva Learning as part of our Viva modules and the package there that's coming soon for the government cloud. And I wish I hadn't said soon because I just really, truly don't know. But it is going to have some of these capabilities native to Viva and available in Teams. So although we don't have those EDU specific tools that you may have seen in your YouTube video, we do have some things coming to the rescue and some things already there via integration with third parties.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. You're on mute.
I sure am. But yeah, I agree with the third party piece, and and I've also tried to help folks mimic that, but there's some pretty cool features in that education piece for those of us that like or need those that are hard to mimic with what we have today. So, but getting with those third party folks who've actually developed some of those features might be helpful.
Yeah, and I hate to switch gears, I do want to go back for a second to what we were talking about with the organizer and co-organizer. I'm sitting here brainstorming, and I really think there's got to be a way, and I'll be happy to tinker with this and report back to this group. There is probably a way for us to do something like Melody suggested in the chat, where you have these attendance reports and you want to take that report and move it somewhere that's already shared, like a shared folder. If you were doing regular trainings or regular sessions that are recorded and you've got a unit that needs access to these things, I want to bet that I could get a Power Automate to take it and move it and park it into, at a minimum, a SharePoint document library where everyone has access to it. So that's just a suggestion off the top of my head, but I'm failing to see the roadblocks that might get in my way for that. So I'm hoping that once I get an opportunity to tinker, that it will be something we can demo and show you how to make those co-organizers have more of an organizer experience, at least in the data that's output from your meetings, the recordings and the attendee reports. So we'll see.
Stacy has accepted the challenge.
Yes. I'll have to update the matrix if I can do that.
Right.
That'll be cool.
What else is going on out there? It's been it's been 2 weeks since we've seen each other. I figured you guys would just be full of questions. You know,
Yeah.
I know you all have been lost without us for the last 2 weeks, you know, so.
And I don't want to speak for Ricardo, but I plan to have my feet up next Friday, digesting my Thanksgiving meal.
Yes, yes. Well, while I don't want to assume, I mean, I could see you all like putting this up on the big screen with your family all around and, you know, watching Q for Teams together as a family. I could see that. I don't want to assume, but I am going to assume we're going to not hang out next week. Amanda, I see you have your hand up.
Yeah, I might ask her a little bit of assistance explaining this issue because Rowan and Tamira also know about it. We are working with a user in creating a Microsoft form that was going to have, you know, some Power Automate stuff going on in the background. They created the form and then they transferred ownership of the form over to a team. And then they did a bunch of testing and then they wanted to delete all of the responses. So they hit the delete all responses and then they would go to download the Excel file and those testing things happened, like they stayed there. Which I found that kind of crazy because I thought that every time you hit that download button, it created a brand new Excel file. Well, how we got them to fix it was they just had to delete the lines out of the Excel file. And then when they downloaded it again, it was empty. And Rowan, you can explain maybe a little bit more about your research on the differences between when a single person owns a form versus you've transferred that ownership over to a team that made the experience different. And I'm a huge advocate for transferring ownership of forms over to teams because everyone on your team should have access to modify or get those results. So I don't know if Rowan, you want to talk a little
I think
more.
you did a pretty good job explaining it, but I guess, yeah, what I read was that when it's owned by an individual, that Excel sheet is generated individually every single time. But once you transfer the ownership, it's then stored in the cloud and is a shared Excel sheet, which is a little bit scary too, because if you have multiple people downloading that Excel file, what keeps them from deleting information off of that? But also, where is that Excel file stored? It raised a lot of questions that we never knew we had.
And yeah, that's a deep dive on that particular feature. I've never so yeah, to the question of where is it stored. The only thing I can think about in that is you share ownership to a group, to your point of so scary that anybody in the group can edit that or change it or delete it. I could see that. Of course, we run into that scenario in a lot of our shared, assets, collaboration and SharePoint in particular. So hopefully it's a trusted, share with responsible team members. But yeah, so I think just through use, you've shown how it's designed, that the as you say, the spreadsheet works differently when it's in that group shared concept. But yeah, the big question, I guess, is where is that stored and what I don't know, Stacey, if you've worked with a form like that.
Yeah, I mean, I have, and I've reset the results and I've played with the Excel sheet, but I don't know that I have ever done that with a group. And I do think that's an interesting dynamic. I totally get why you'd want to. So I think there's a lot of trust involved there. But assuming that is a tight-knit group and everyone is working towards the same goals, I do think it becoming stored and shared by the group is going to influence when it refreshes and how it refreshes, and certainly would interesting. Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of trying to absorb where it goes and how it's touched and refreshed when Forms does the reset of results too.
Yeah. Alex just put this link in the chat here.
The person that deleted all the results, it deleted it on the actual form, but the results still stayed in the spreadsheet. So that's what we found is that was what we found is very weird. But then we were worried that if they hadn't, maybe they did the opposite, where they just deleted the results in the survey, or I'm sorry, in the Excel spreadsheet, what would it have done to the actual form results? And is there a way to recover that information? Had they, maybe the person rearranged some columns and messed the spreadsheet up. Well, how do we get version history from there if we don't even know where it's saved at? We didn't think you would have an answer for this. We were just, bringing it to you.
Right.
Yeah.
Maybe you guys could do some research for us.
And I'm just sitting here thinking, I'm wondering if those scenarios are even in the current iteration, because a lot of things, they start out, and when it comes to version history or retention policies, or those bigger governance pieces, version 1 of many things that don't often have those. So that was my first thought, is maybe that's a like a roadmap item, because it certainly seems like a valid one there. I'm just checking the chat here.
Rowan shared the screenshot that he did when it was explaining the differences.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
I guess we would just like to have some additional information on it to really get our heads wrapped around it. I know it's a common practice for me, even just like customer satisfaction surveys, that stuff. I always transfer them to our team, which is just a group of 6 of us. And I'm not really worried about them going in and messing up the data. However, they might not know that they could mess up the data. So it definitely needs to be communicated better. But I would, I'm a huge proponent, Ricardo, with the work out loud thing. All of my work, I want my team to have access to. So I love transferring surveys or forms over into, the team.
So here's where this gets hilarious for me, because now I'm about to put on my InfoPath hat. And many of you aren't even old enough to remember that InfoPath was a thing. But in my
we still use that.
Yeah. So when InfoPath was in its heyday, a lot of people paid me to do InfoPath work for them. And that was a challenge as well. But Amanda, the scenario you're talking about where, while this form, it was easy to fire up and kind of done ad hoc, it now turns out the data there, needs to really be managed and stored and needs a kind of a system of record kind of thing. And so as I was kind of thinking through what you were describing, while one approach is kind of transferring that form and its data over to someone else, the other one is considering, maybe a Power Automate or something, which is taking those responses that are by default being put into a easy to access Excel form, but maybe we have another flow that's actually grabbing that and putting it in what we would call a true system of record. I'll take that entry and put it into a SharePoint list or something like that does have governance and retention and version history, such that yes, we can pass this form around, but if you really want to know what the true responses were for this thing, we're going to go over to this other system. That was an approach I used in my InfoPath days as well, when people needed that kind of more formal governance of the data. And InfoPath is a fancy XML form. And so that didn't always work out for, the scenarios you described. So that may be an approach, is to think about adding a component to your forms scenario here where some of that data is governed, perhaps in another system.
It's actually funny that you say that, because that was the goal of the, Power Automate on the form, and they were testing it to see its connections with Power Automate, but they wanted to. So they did the Power Automate where it was like sending emails and whatnot, notifying them that a response has been created. And they wanted to test that portion of it before moving to the testing it to go to, having all the information sent over to a SharePoint list.
Okay.
So it is funny that you say that, because that's the end goal. We were just in our testing, we're like, oh, well, this is weird.
Okay. Gotcha. So yeah, but that's a good thing to discover, because I could see a person making some assumptions about how they think forms will handle their data in that group environment, and so you kind of surfaced, exactly how that works. So that's good.
Yeah, I think we're going to have to communicate it out, because I know we want to make the recommendation for, especially when people are like leaving the agency, or going to another agency or whatever, or just leaving. They win that lottery.
Right.
We want to have that kind of in place. This is the recommendation: transfer all your forms to a group, that your teammates all are a part of. But we then need to make sure that those people that have that, that access, how that also works. We don't want them to just go in and mess up a bunch of data because we don't really need a list for, customer service satisfaction. We just need the data, and we need to be able to go back and get the data if we need to, for a certain time period. So that wouldn't really warrant putting it into a list. It's just having it as, backup information.
All right. You got me all nostalgic now for my InfoPath days. This is one of my old presentations I did back in, I guess this was I don't know how long ago this was, but anyway.
I'd say those were the days, but I have some memory feeds in Facebook that remind me how much I pulled my hair out trying to get InfoPath and SharePoint Designer to play nice with each other back in the day.
That's why I paid so well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I definitely learned a ton in wrestling with those tools that I still use today, for sure.
For all you TWD fans out there, you would have enjoyed that presentation. Walking Dead fans. But anyway. Good stuff. Well, we got a minute or so here left. I see Stacy's been helping in the chat with some
So-
questions.
Sorry,
ahead.
I'm interrupting again. I think one of our
Go for it.
teammates, Dave, just found where those surveys are stored, or at least the
Ooh,
the
yeah.
Excel. It's in the SharePoint site behind our team, and it's in the Insight library. So it's not saved in the channels; it's saved in the Insight library.
Is that a library specific to the forms, or is Insight the name of your?
It's not a channel,
Interesting.
Okay.
so
And when you click download, that defaults to that location.
it's looking like it. But I think we have more forms than this, but I'm not 100% sure. I might not have downloaded the results for some of this stuff, but it's looking like that's because it says SharePoint app as the modified by.
Mm.
See that Insight library under the documents heading? It's right where your general file was. It just
Oh,
I
you
thought
saw?
I thought it was interesting that it had a heading, the in. Go back to site contents, maybe.
Go back to this one here, and then you said you saw something here.
Yeah, see, it has in channels.
Yep.
And then an in-site library. So
Oh,
there's an
right.
interesting like collapse menu here. That's
Oh, yeah.
different.
Yeah, I've seen this for a little while. I love it because I actually have a whole session or blog post or whatever about how people can come and store things in their SharePoint site and wonder why they don't see them in Teams. And I think this helps to call that out. So a library, we don't really have enough time to get too much into it, but yes, I think that's what this is all about. And what we'll, I think, also see at some point, actually, it's here. That little button there actually is trying to take me back to the channel for which that team existed. So those are some features, I think, trying to bridge the gap between the SharePoint site and the team site, because for the most part, historically, this site acts like it doesn't know anything about Teams. And to me, these two features are attempts to try to bridge that gap, if that makes sense. I don't know if anybody's noticed this in their teams or their SharePoint sites, but it's good stuff. Awesome. Yeah, maybe next time we dive into that a little more. And especially that concept I just described about why can't I see it in Teams? If you don't, that seems like a new concept for you. I'd love to show that, because that might be helpful. I've seen that bite some people in the past, but
Mm-hmm.
yep. Thanks for watching. Be sure to like and subscribe and check out the blog for more content.